The recent unrest in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng has brought the spotlight back on the immediate reintroduction of the Universal Basic Income Grant. Such a move could, along with socio-economic reforms, prevent the weaponisation of vulnerable communities for political ends. Business reporter Kopano Gumbi has this story.
There are renewed calls for the introduction of a universal basic income grant. At first, the calls came because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but now the chorus is growing louder because of the unrest of last week. And for organised labour, this process has already begun in the form of the 350 Rand COVID-19 social relief grant, introduced last year to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable.
For us, it's simple, and we've made a 12-point plan package of relief measures in response to the violence in KZN and Gauteng, but also in the economic crisis in the country. One of the things we've said is that just simply reinstate the 350 COVID-19 unemployment grant. With all of its issues, in essence, that is the genesis of a basic income grant.
President Ramaphosa said that the government and his party are considering the possibility of introducing the grant. While some detractors caution against it because of the financial burden it would have on the country, COSATU are of the view that this is feasible.
I think what we can't afford is to have 40 million people with no source of income to buy food. I think if anything, if KZN, the violence there, yes, it is politically orchestrated. Definitely those people who targeted shopping centers to be destroyed. Nobody walks around looting food and carries jerry cans sufficient enough to burn an entire shopping center. But yet it sparks like wildfire because there's a sea of unemployment and hopelessness and absolute poverty amongst many people. So you have to do something. The damage to the economy right now can easily be over 50 billion Rand as a consequence of KZN. The 350 COVID-19 grant costs about 24 billion Rand a year. So what's cheaper?
Other arguments against it are that it would create a state of socially dependent adults and reduce the number of economically active people. But according to one research centre, that wouldn't be the case.
The IEJ worked with an organisation which modelled the macroeconomic and social impacts of introducing a grant at different levels. So at the food poverty line, at the lower bound poverty line, the upper bound poverty line, and even a higher level. And what that research showed is a very sophisticated model, is that not only did you have a massive reduction in the levels of inequality and poverty in society, you had a big stimulus impact on local economies and communities, which also then helped to stabilize the budget deficit and the debt to GDP ratio.
The introduction of the grant would need to be accompanied by real structural reforms in order to have a lasting impact. And given the current state of the country's budget, it would need some political will to implement. For Newsroom Africa on Channel 405, I am Kopano Gumbi in Johannesburg.